For 84 years, a question haunted naval historians and survivors alike. Did the British Royal Navy sink Hitler's most powerful battleship, or did the Germans destroy their own prize vessel first? When oceanographer Robert Ballard descended nearly 3 miles beneath the Atlantic surface in 1989, what he discovered in the wreckage would shock experts and rewrite naval history. The evidence lying on the ocean floor told a story that neither side wanted to admit. The ship's condition was so unexpected, so perfectly preserved, that it revealed a truth both nations had been concealing for decades. This is what the Bismarck's wreck finally exposed after lying silent in the darkness for over 8 decades. The German battleship Bismarck represented the pinnacle of naval engineering when it was commissioned on August 24, 1940. At 823 feet long and displacing over 50,000 tons, it was Nazi Germany's largest warship, a floating fortress designed to dominate the Atlantic and strangle Britain's vital supply lines from North America. Adolf Hitler himself had overseen its construction, viewing the Bismarck as proof of German technological supremacy. The ship's armor was formidable. Its belt armor measured 12.6 inches thick, designed to withstand the heaviest shells the Royal Navy could throw at it. 8 massive 15-inch guns in 4 turrets gave it devastating offensive power. The ship could achieve speeds exceeding 30 knots, making it faster than most battleships. The crew of 2,200 men believed their ship was unsinkable. After a torpedo hit during its maiden operation, seaman Herbert Manthe reported that the weapon merely left scratches on the paintwork. The crew even developed a slogan, "The Bismarck cannot be sunk." But on May 24, 1941, the Bismarck proved its lethal capability in the most devastating way possible. In the Denmark Strait between Iceland and Greenland, it encountered the pride of the British fleet, HMS Hood, the largest battle cruiser in the Royal Navy, accompanied by the new battleship HMS Prince of Wales, so new that civilian workers were still aboard. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. At 6:01 in the morning, from a distance of 9 miles, a shell from the Bismarck struck HMS Hood near her aft ammunition magazines. What happened next remains one of the most catastrophic moments in naval warfare. Hood erupted in a massive explosion that tore the ship apart. The 860-foot battlecruiser, which had sailed the seas for over 2 decades as Britain's symbol of naval dominance, split in 2 and sank in just 3 minutes. Of HMS Hood's crew of 1,418 men, only 3 survived: Ted Briggs, Bob Tilburn, and Bill Dundas. It remains the single greatest loss of life in Royal Navy history. Those 3 men were propelled to the surface by air bubbles from the rapidly imploding hull. Pure chance saved them, while 1,415 of their comrades perished in the freezing waters. Winston Churchill was incensed. The destruction of Hood was a national humiliation and a devastating blow to British morale. He issued a simple, direct order to the Royal Navy: sink the Bismarck. What followed was one of the most intense naval pursuits in history, but the Bismarck had a fatal vulnerability. During the battle with HMS Hood, shells from HMS Prince of Wales struck the Bismarck's bow, rupturing fuel tanks and causing the German battleship to lose access to 1,000 tons of fuel oil. Admiral Gunther Lütjens, commander of the German fleet, made a crucial decision: abandon the Atlantic raid and head for occupied France to make repairs. On the evening of May 26, 1941, 15 Fairey Swordfish torpedo bombers from HMS Ark Royal attacked the Bismarck in atrocious weather conditions. These were antiquated biplanes that looked like they belonged in World War I. Yet one torpedo struck the battleship's stern, a lucky hit in terrible seas that would seal the Bismarck's fate. The damage was catastrophic, but invisible from above. The torpedo's detonation created a transient whipping response that caused the hull to act like a springboard, according to survivors, with the stern structure vibrating at a different frequency than the main hull. The steering gear, encased in 150 millimeters of armor, was destroyed. The rudders jammed at 12 degrees to port. The Bismarck could no longer be controlled. It could only circle helplessly, heading directly toward its British pursuers. The journey continued. Throughout the night of May 26 to 27, British destroyers harassed the crippled Bismarck with torpedo attacks and gunfire, preventing any damage control efforts. German sailors attempted to reach the steering compartments to repair the damage, but the structural failure was too severe. One diver nearly died when his air hose became ensnared in the damaged structure. Executive Officer Fregattenkapitän Hans Uhls told the exhausted divers, "Only if we had the diving apparatus issued to submariners." As dawn broke on May 27, 1941, the Bismarck faced its final battle. The British battleships HMS King George V and HMS Rodney, along with the heavy cruisers HMS Norfolk and HMS Dorsetshire, closed in for the kill around 8:45 a.m. What followed was a 92-minute bombardment of almost unimaginable ferocity. The British ships opened fire from ranges as close as 3,000 meters, almost point blank for naval artillery. They were so close that the Rodney had to zigzag to avoid overtaking the slower-moving German ship. Shells rained down on the Bismarck like a metal storm. Survivors would later describe it as hell incarnate. Joseph Statz, an artificer stationed in the damage control central deep within the ship, watched the damage control board light up with catastrophic reports. Red lights indicating taking water covered almost the entire port side. Green lights indicating floodage showed along nearly the entire starboard side. Only the engine rooms below the armored deck still showed white, indicating they were being pumped. Above deck, the carnage was unimaginable. Analysis suggests that between 300 and 400 shells struck the Bismarck, out of 2,876 shells fired by the British ships. The superstructure was being systematically destroyed. Gun mounts were blown away. The forward fire control tower took multiple hits, killing everyone inside. One of the 15-inch guns in turret Dora was shredded by what appeared to be an internal explosion. But here the story takes a disturbing turn, one that would only become clear decades later when the wreck was finally explored. Despite the devastating bombardment, Ballard's survey found no underwater penetrations of the ship's fully armored citadel. 8 holes were found in the hull, 1 on the starboard side and 7 on the port side, but all were above the waterline. The British shells, despite their number and ferocity, had failed to penetrate the Bismarck's main armor belt, where it would have mattered most, below the waterline where flooding would have been catastrophic and irreversible. The ship's main battery turrets had been silenced by 9:31 a.m., but the Bismarck remained afloat. Its engineering spaces were intact. The armored citadel protecting the vital machinery had done its job. Ballard later estimated that the Bismarck could have stayed afloat for at least a day when the British vessels ceased gunfire. At approximately 9:30 a.m., with the bridge personnel no longer responding to communications from below, Executive Officer Uhls took command from the Damage Control Central. He knew the ship could no longer fight. He knew the end was inevitable. But he also knew something else. The British might try to board and capture the Bismarck as a prize. For the Germans, this was unthinkable. Their technological marvel falling into enemy hands, towed in humiliation to a British port. Uhls gave the order to prepare the ship for scuttling and to ensure that the entire crew left her. Gerhard Unack, the chief engineer, received the command and immediately set about opening the sea valves and setting explosive charges in the engine rooms. The plan was simple but effective: flood the ship from within to ensure it would sink before the British could capture it. But Joseph Statz, listening to the shells still crashing into the ship above, initially refused to leave the relative safety of the Damage Control Central. 2 of his comrades from training, Seifert and Moritz, finally convinced him to attempt an escape. The 3 men began a harrowing climb up a communications shaft only 75 centimeters wide, blocked with electrical cables, while the ship listed increasingly to port. The climb required 3 times the normal energy, as they had to hang onto rungs on the opposite side of the shaft. When they finally emerged, they found death everywhere. The forward fire control turret had been completely shot away. Lieutenant Jachreis, who had left Damage Control Central just minutes before Statz, lay dead along with several others. A shell exploded nearby and threw all 3 men to the floor. Shrapnel struck Statz's shoulder. Moritz appeared to be dead. But Statz and another officer, Lieutenant Friedrich Cardinal, kept moving. They made their way to the port side where one of the 150mm gun turrets was now almost underwater. Cardinal, who had shown Adolf Hitler the Bismarck's new gunnery computer just 22 days earlier, carefully timed his leap into the Atlantic waves. Statz followed, jumping between the gun barrels as the cold water surged over the listing deck. Once in the water, Statz swam toward his companion. To his horror, Cardinal's head hung limply in the water. The lieutenant had carried a pistol with him and had committed suicide rather than face capture or drowning. Statz had no time to reflect on this tragedy. He had to swim away from the sinking battleship or be pulled down by its suction. As he was swept along the port side, Statz saw the terrible damage the ship had sustained. Gun barrels pointed in every direction. Some smaller gun mounts were completely destroyed. The ship was slowly capsizing and sinking by the stern. At 10:39 a.m. on May 27, 1941, the Bismarck rolled over and disappeared beneath the waves. Of the 2,200-man crew, only 110 were rescued by British vessels and another 5 by German vessels. The survivors picked up by the British, 86 by HMS Dorsetshire and 25 by the destroyer HMS Maori, became prisoners of war. Tragically, hundreds more survivors were left in the water when the British ships detected what they thought was a U-boat periscope and fled the area, fearing torpedo attack. The British celebrated their victory. They had avenged HMS Hood. The threat to Atlantic convoys was eliminated. Official reports stated that British gunfire and torpedoes had sent the Bismarck to the bottom. The German survivors, now prisoners, insisted they had scuttled their own ship. The debate began immediately and would rage for nearly 5 decades. For 48 years, the truth lay hidden nearly 3 miles beneath the Atlantic's surface. The Bismarck had sunk in international waters approximately 400 miles west of Brest, France, far beyond the reach of any diving equipment of the era. The location remained a mystery, and with it, the answer to the question that haunted both sides: who really sank the Bismarck? Then came Dr. Robert Ballard. Fresh from his triumphant discovery of the Titanic in 1985, the renowned oceanographer set his sights on finding the Bismarck. His first expedition in July 1988 found nothing. But Ballard was determined. He returned in late May 1989 with advanced underwater technology, including remotely operated vehicles and sophisticated sonar. On June 8, 1989, after combing an area of 200 square miles, Ballard and his team finally found the Bismarck's remains at a depth of approximately 4,790 meters, 15,719 feet. The discovery location was stunning in itself. The ship had struck an extinct underwater volcano that rose some 3,300 feet above the surrounding abyssal plain, triggering a landslide. The Bismarck had slid down the mountain, coming to rest about 2/3 of the way down. When the first images came back from the deep, Ballard and his team were stunned. They expected to find a shattered hulk, broken and twisted by the massive battle damage and the impact with the sea floor. Instead, they found something that would fundamentally challenge the accepted narrative of the Bismarck's sinking. The battleship lay upright, with many of its primary features, including the massive gun turrets, still discernible. The hull was in surprisingly good condition, despite spending decades under crushing pressure and the corrosive effects of salt water. The wooden teak deck planking was still preserved in many places. Even paint remained visible on parts of the wreck. But what shocked Ballard most was what he did not find. There was no evidence of the internal implosions that occur when a hull that is not fully flooded sinks. The surrounding water, which has much greater pressure than the air inside the hull, would normally crush an unflooded ship. Instead, Ballard found the hull in relatively good condition. Ballard stated simply that Bismarck did not implode. This was the key revelation. When a ship sinks without being fully flooded first, Water pressure causes catastrophic implosions as it crushes air pockets in the hull. The Titanic showed extensive implosion damage, but the Bismarck's compartments appeared to have been flooded evenly when the ship sank. Exactly what would happen if scuttling valves had been deliberately opened. Ballard's team found more damning evidence. No shell holes penetrated below the waterline. All 8 holes found in the hull were above the waterline, devastating to the superstructure and crew, but not fatal to the ship itself. The armoured belt had done its job. The British bombardment, for all its fury, had not achieved what was needed to sink a capital ship, underwater penetrations to flood the vital machinery spaces. The stern had broken away, but analysis suggested this happened during the capsizing process or the slide down the underwater mountain, not during the battle itself. The 4 main gun turrets had fallen out during the capsizing, as the ship rolled over and they tumbled from their barbettes into the debris field surrounding the main wreck. Joseph Statz, the sole survivor from Damage Control Central, provided detailed testimony that corroborated what the wreck revealed. He confirmed that scuttling charges were set in the engine rooms and auxiliary machinery spaces, and that pumps that had been removing water from flooded compartments were deliberately reversed to flood the ship. Baron Burkhard von Mullenheim-Rechberg, the senior surviving German officer, supported Statz's account. So did Gerhard Junak, who personally opened the sea valves and set the charges. The physical evidence from the ocean floor matched their testimonies perfectly. In 2001, a follow-up expedition using Russian-built mini-submarines provided even more detailed examination. William N. Lang, a Woods Hole expert on that expedition, reported many shell holes in the superstructure and deck, but not that many along the side and none below the waterline. The conclusion was inescapable. The darkest secret the Bismarck's wreck revealed was one that challenged both national narratives. The British had not sunk the Bismarck through superior firepower alone. The Germans had not gone down fighting to the last. The truth was more complex and more human. Most experts now agree that the Bismarck would have eventually foundered because of the battle damage, but the scuttling charges ensured it happened sooner rather than later, perhaps hastening the inevitable by only minutes to hours. The British bombardment had destroyed the ship as a fighting unit, killed most of the crew, and made sinking inevitable. But the German crew had denied the Royal Navy the satisfaction of capturing their ship. The answer to the decades-old question turned out to be that both sides were right, and both sides were wrong. The Bismarck's wreck tells a story far more nuanced than either wartime propaganda admitted. The British achieved a remarkable operational victory. They hunted down and eliminated Nazi Germany's most powerful surface raider, avenging HMS Hood and protecting Atlantic convoys. Their pursuit was relentless, their coordination impressive, and their eventual victory decisive. But the physical evidence from the ocean floor proves that British shells and torpedoes alone did not sink the Bismarck in the conventional sense. The ship's armoured citadel had survived the bombardment. The scuttling charges finished what battle damage had made inevitable. For the German survivors, this truth was bittersweet. They had prevented their ship from falling into enemy hands, a small victory in a catastrophic defeat. But nearly 2,100 of their comrades had died, many killed not by enemy fire, but trapped below decks when the scuttling valves were opened and the ship rapidly flooded and capsized. The German government considers the wreck a war grave and has restricted access to honour those who died. Ballard himself kept the exact coordinates secret for years to prevent salvage operations and protect the site. The Bismarck's 8-month career ended in the cold Atlantic, but its wreck continues to fascinate historians and naval experts. The physical evidence lying 3 miles down has forced a re-examination of one of World War II's most famous naval battles. It reminds us that history is rarely as simple as wartime narratives suggest, and that the truth often lies buried, literally in this case, waiting for technology to catch up with our questions. The survivors are gone now. Joseph Statz, Baron von Mullenheim-Rechberg, and the others who lived to tell their stories have all passed away. But their testimonies, validated by the evidence on the ocean floor, have given us a more complete understanding of what happened on that morning of May 27, 1941. The Bismarck's darkest secret wasn't really dark at all. It was simply the truth, a truth that both sides had reasons to obscure, but one that the ship itself could finally reveal after 80 years of silence in the depths. The wreck reminds us that in war, victory and defeat are often more complicated than headlines suggest, and that even in the darkest moments, human decisions shape history in unexpected ways. If you found this deep dive into the Bismarck's final secrets fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from World War II. What other mysteries from the war do you want us to explore? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, the ocean floor holds more secrets than we've yet discovered. The next revelation could be just one expedition away,